Well, I'm propagating some blackberries. What I did was go out in the blackberry patch, and as I showed you, I had a big gap. Had a bunch of Freedoms and Travelers die. Primark Freedom, Primark Traveler blackberries die. So I went out there and cut off a bunch of them. And this is just something I do to keep my head in the game. You need to make sure you know which way is up. It was growing this way, and sometimes it can look a little deceiving, kind of hard to tell. So when I'm taking them off, I make sure and put an angle on the bottom cut. That reminds me, that's the point, that's the end that goes in the ground. No, for me, it's no other reason except that. I want to make sure I know bottom from top. Okay, so what I'm doing is putting it in the dip and grow. I'll show you that. So here's my dip and grow. Again, it's only going down about that deep to that node right there. And I want to paint that one with the dip and grow simply because I'm going to stick it down in the ground to about right there. I'm going to leave these two growing buds above the potting soil. So I'm doing that and just painting that in dip and grow. You leave it down about 5 seconds, pull it out. The dip and grow soaks in, stays wet. I'm putting it down in a wet medium, moist medium. And anyway, I like the dip and grow. I've had good success with it. So what I do first, and this is pretty full, but what I do first is come in here and I'll punch a hole, kind of ream it out. This is the one I just dipped. I want to leave, I can leave just one growing shoot, growing bud up above the ground, but I want to leave two. Usually it will sprout from both of them. But anyway, I'll just push it down in there, being very careful not to damage this little growing bud, okay? That's where you want your growth from. If you break that off, you're done. So be careful when you push it down in there. That's why I leave an inch or so above that with a flat edge where I can push it down in there. Now I'm leaving this, I don't know whether you can see that or not, but I'm leaving one growing bud there, one bud there. So it should sprout in two different places if it roots. Not all of them are going to root, so you do more than you think you're going to need. I've had a 90% success rate. I've had a 90% failure rate. So you just don't know. These need to be sprayed, misted several times a day. With if they're on your patio, you can get out there with a water bottle and mist them. They just need to be kept moist. The soil needs to be kept fairly moist, but the tops have to be kept moist. That's why you have to mist them, not just water them, but mist them. Keep those tops moist. Let me show you one more. All right, I'm gonna dip it. Now I really want to paint that one, and that one, and that one. I'm gonna have that one pretty deep, and these, that and that. In fact, I'll paint that one too with the dip and grow, because these two are going to be above ground. Okay, this one and this one will be above ground. Let me get it out of there. Again, being very careful not to break that growing bud on top. Drill you a hole, push it down in there. Once you get a bunch of them done, it's kind of hard to get around it because you got so many in the way. But push it down in there, and I'm leaving that little bud. I don't know whether you can see it or not. That little bud right there, and that bud right there above ground. And I'll fill this up, and you're saying to yourself, boy, this is the time I need to be doing this. No, I should have done this back in the fall. Didn't do it. And if I had done it in the fall, I would have, the root systems might be good enough to plant this spring. If you're not in Texas, that might not be a problem, but you've got to have a real good root system when you go in the ground because it gets hot sometimes in May in Texas. But anyway, this is the way you do it. spritz it often. Every time you think about it, go out there and give it a spritz. I don't think you can do it too much. If you want to build a drip system, drip irrigation system, or a misting system for yours, I've got one on my playlist. I'll put the playlist for the misting system, and I've also got a playlist on propagation. It goes in a little bit more detail than I'm doing on this one because I've done it so many times for you. I'm just doing a quick one on this. I hope it's quick. And then I'll mark it. I'll put a little marker in here. I've got 2 different kinds that I'm propagating, and I'll mark that. Put the marker in there so you know, so I know what kind it is. As I was trimming them or pruning them and getting these cuttings, I made sure I kept them separate. I have Primark Freedom, Primark Traveler. I cannot sell these, so don't ask if you can buy some. This is a patented product, but as I understand the patent, I can propagate them for my own use. I had a bunch of them die, and I'm replacing plants is what I'm doing, replacing dead plants. So I can't sell these to you. Don't ask. Somebody's going to ask anyway, but don't. Anyway, I'll fill this up. I got about look like a half dozen more big ones. And question also, how big? This is a little bit bigger than a pencil, number 2 pencil. That's a pencil size, pencil size, pencil size. But I had a lot of the canes that were long, especially the Freedoms, had some real long canes out in the aisle. And usually first year plantings, when I plant a plant, I will let it grow first year. I don't prune it except to do something like this. So some of these were out in the aisle, and I just where they were going out in the aisle, and we're going to get mowed over, stepped over, whatever. That's where I trimmed these, and some of them were some pretty good sized canes. That's as big as one of those. What's that pencil we used when we first starting to learn to write in the first grade? That big old round pencil. It's about as big as that one. Anyway, 3/8 inches is what I'm trying to say. But this is the way to do it. I'll give you an update on the success of it, and I'll do, this is Primark Freedoms. I will do Primark Travelers next. Do it just like this. Now some of y'all are going to say to yourself, that's just planting way too close together. And you're right. Ding, 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 you get the prize. But what I have found is if I plant in individual cups, individual, say 4-inch pots, first of all, that 4-inch pot is only about 4 inches deep. And so I'm typically going to have maybe 1 rooting node underground, maybe 2. And I'm not going to get the root system that I'm going to get if I've got a taller pot. This pot is 12 inches tall, probably about 12 inches diameter. And I'm going to, if I've got 3 or 4 rooting nodes, that's where it's going to root. Now, is it going to be a mess when they all get rooted, or some of them get rooted, and all the roots are intertangled, and just, yes, it's going to be a mess. But guess what? It's an easy mess to fix. So I've got plenty of videos on that, undoing those roots, unmatting them, and it's just, it's easy. And then from here, like I say, I'll show you the progress of these, assuming they're going to make it. From here, we'll go to individual pots. As soon as I see good growth here, and especially if I see some roots start coming out of the holes in the bottom, then I know we've got some rooting going on. Sometimes I will even turn it to the side, turn the pot to the side, and try to look down in there maybe and just see what kind of rooting system I have. You don't want to just pull them up. You're going to pull the roots off. Those roots are tender. Don't do that. So you just have to wait till you're pretty dang sure you've got a good root system, and then put them in pots, individual pots. And where it's hot, I would not advise you, unless it's got a great root system, to plant in the summer. And even then, you better take care of it. You better mulch it. You better have a drip system on it. You better really take care of it, because it needs a good head start. And typically, I'm not going to get that kind of a head start until they've been in individual pots for 6 months or so. So I'll plant these in the fall, unless they just go crazy, and I don't think they will. Now, Some of these I told you were pencil size. These are the Travelers. The Travelers weren't near as big. I had maybe 1 or 2 that were pencil size. The rest of them were pretty small. I did them anyway. Does size matter? There are those that think it does. I don't know. We'll see. I'll tell you what. That's just a good. This will be a good thing. I've had success with. I've probably had more success with the larger cuttings than I have the smaller ones, but I've had plenty of success with the smaller ones. So I don't know. It's just kind of hard to say. But here's a look at them in the pots, ready to go. Put in a semi-shady place where my dog won't dig at them and pull at them, and mist them. Spritz them 3, 4, 5 times a day, 10 times a day, whatever you think of. Every time you even think of these plants, spray them. All right, we're gone.